I want to bring in jury consultant Alan Turkheimer. And Alan, it's great to have you. And when you listen to what the jury has been listening to this morning, how do you see that there, and Anna was just mentioning a little while ago, as though it seems that at moments today, the jury was kind of looking away from Cohen and from Bovee and actually looking around to seeing who was coming in. Does that tell you anything?
I think even before that, he's been on the stand for a long time, and I think jurors have already made up their mind. They've already assessed his credibility. They didn't come away thinking he's the most credible witness. They understand that he's been less than truthful, to put it nicely, on many occasions. So at this point, it's getting where jurors might think that his testimony is going to be redundant or maybe overkill. So they've made up their minds. Now, of course, they're keeping an open mind, and there's going to be maybe a few more witnesses and more questions with Michael Cohen. But at this point, I think they've seen enough, and I think most of them have a pretty firm idea of what he's all about and how he connects the former president to the payments and then the records, his involvement in that. But also there's some jurors who are doubting his credibility and how he maybe takes things into his own hands. So it's very interesting where they stand, but wherever they stand, I think they're pretty firmly committed to their assessment of Michael Cohen at this point.
So if they've made an assessment on Michael Cohen and he's expected to be the prosecution's final witness, we would move into the next stage of this trial, which would be the defense's turn to put on a case. Still unclear if they will call any witnesses. Does it help or hurt defense typically to not call any witnesses?
I think it's good to call witnesses. Now, of course, you can make the argument that the prosecution didn't carry their burden, so we don't need to do anything, and they don't need to do anything. That can be persuasive, but I always think it's good. Jurors expect it, given the rules of litigation and criminal matters. I think jurors usually expect that the defense at least put somebody on. Now, of course, the defense can argue that all they needed to do was cross-examine the witnesses, but jurors do expect defendants to come in there and present some witnesses on their behalf.
But another interesting, you were talking about the importance of specific key facts. And if the jury determines that this witness lied on these key facts, is there a difference in that, you know, look, the witness can say, look, yeah, I've lied in the past, but I'm not lying now. How do you determine that?
So, and that's why I say it's all going to come down to closing arguments, because the prosecution is going to have to emphasize how to evaluate Michael Cohen and how to evaluate credibility, because the jury instruction itself says if you lied about a material fact, you know, not about what time of day it was, what time the call was it on a different day, but something material. And something material will be like when he met with Donald Trump, when did they devise this plan with Alan Weisselberg of how to break down these payments and what the purpose of that payment was for. So in terms of Michael Cohen's credibility, yes, he's been someone, he's been convicted of a crime. Yes, he was in jail for a year. Yes, he wants to go after Donald Trump. And you heard his podcast interview where for the first time the jury got to hear the real Michael Cohen. He's not a likable guy. But as a prosecutor, and I've had to put people that have robbed people, shot people, stabbed people as my main witness, what I used to argue to them is, look, when you cast a play in hell, there are no angels to play the part. You are not going to find a perfect witness. Everyone has their flaws. But let's look at the person and when they testified specifically as to the crucial facts, how is it corroborated and how did he come off on the stand? And Michael Cohen, from me being in the court, he came off credible. He came off believable. He came off human. Does he have a vendetta against Donald Trump? Absolutely. And I will embrace it because you know what? He spent 13 months in jail, thinking about each and every day, why am I here? For trying to help out Donald Trump. That's why I'm here. So I expect him to be mad. And that's why the prosecution needs to embrace that obsession, embrace that anger, and sell it to a jury, because I think that as human beings, we can see and accept that and embrace it. Of course he's going to be mad. Of course he wants to go after him. But is he lying about how we got here?
Can closing arguments, Alan, make a big difference when it comes to jurors, sending them into deliberations?
Absolutely. There's plenty of uncertainty, but one thing we know is jurors aren't going to be talking about how Michael Cohen is an angel in the deliberations. But closings are crucial. So at this point, as I mentioned earlier, the jurors have made up their minds for the most part, And so closings are not really for persuasion. They're more to empower the individual members on the jury to take the arguments and then use them in the deliberations to persuade others. So that's going to be really important to tie everything together, to characterize the evidence, to characterize the testimony, and continue on with the story, because that's what jurors need. That's what they've been getting. But now everything has to be tied together. The law has to be incorporated. And so closing arguments are going to be made. And they're going to target the leaders in who they think are going to be the leaders in the deliberation. And so you might hear some arguments that are tailored to certain individual jurors. But no matter what happens, the closings are going to be really important to set the stage for the deliberation process.